Good day, everyone. I welcome all of you here to the panel of Women Justice. And what do we define women justice? And what is the role of a woman in the society in a displaced world? How can we help our youth that are losing everything, the history and everything? My name is Florence Bahupahandura from Namibia, the southwest of Africa.
Just introduce myself. All right, so family, it seems that our chairperson hasn't turned up, so we're going to try. Sorry, is it going to be you now? Yeah? Right, because the Okay, all right. Let me introduce myself. My name's Ngozi Fulani. I am from Sistah Space.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Djanomi Headley. I'm the operations manager at Sistah Space.
And on the panel, we have Sebastian and Arimutsu. Okay, sorry for this. This is my first time to do this. And a summary about women justice. While it's widely acknowledged that female survivors and authoritarian regimes
Can you tell us who you are and where you're from?
Okay. I'm Florence Bahupahandura from the southwest of Africa, now called Namibia. I'm from the Ovaherero Traditional Authority, representing them here. And we are the one who went through the genocide of 1904 up to the 1905, the 20th century genocide that wiped off the 80% of my nation and 60% of the Nama nations. Unfortunately, one of the panelists that is supposed to be here, Sima Luipert, her father is in hospital. She can't be with us. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Summary. While it's widely acknowledged that female survivors and authoritarian regimes, repressions, and colonial rule experience unique forms of suffering, and that women often play pivotal roles in post-violence recovery. Discussions focusing on the gendered needs and perspectives regarding reparation have remained somehow limited. This panel stands as a resolute effort to bridge this gap by addressing the disparities and silence in previous conversations. It recognizes the pressing needs to foreground the experiences and voices of women in the discourse and reparatory justice, acknowledging their distinct struggles and contributions. The panel is a critical step towards redressing these issues and endeavors to provide a comprehensive examination of reparatory justice through a female lens. I will give the mic to
Ngozi. No worries. Thank you. What I'd first like to do is, for those of you who don't know about Sistah Space, Sistah Space is an organization that supports Black, African and Caribbean heritage women affected by domestic and sexual abuse here in the UK. So it doesn't matter where you're originally from as an African, when you land here and you face domestic and sexual abuse, crimes of that nature, then Sistah Space is there for you because we have a unique lens and we provide a service for us, by us. Now, when we know that when we go to institutions in the UK and we present as victims or survivors of abuse, the response that we get is not the same as perhaps our white and even Asian sometimes counterparts. I'm here to be real in the room, yes? So in a moment, I'm going to hand over to Operations Manager Djanomi, who happens to be my biological daughter as well, all right? Yeah, and many of you will know me through, not through Sistah Space, but through an event that happened in November last year. And if I may, I'd like to just get that out of the way. It's the first, I have never really spoken about this. I do not intend to go into detail about it. But I will tell you that in my role as the CEO of Sistah Space, it was the 16 days of activism. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So it's a time where, you know, they put aside time to recognize women who are affected by gender violence, gender-based violence. So I think there must have been about 300 groups invited to the palace. Now, I'm not one of these people that are gonna, you know, regulate myself, that there are places I can't go. I can't go anywhere. And I do. All right. So if we are going to this place, wherever it is, it could be Buckingham Palace, it could be a garden shed. If I'm representing Black women, I'm going. You see? So that is what I did. I always like to represent Africa somehow and the Caribbean somehow. So it's either if I wear my beads or my dress or my red, gold and green, you will know by the shade of my skin who I am, but I like to represent. I feel good in my own clothes. Now, when I got there, as I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail. When I got there, I was approached by somebody in service to the royal family. Hear me well. In service. So as I'm standing there talking to two sisters, I'm not fascinated by Buckingham Palace. It doesn't do anything for me. It's another venue. I've got work to do. She approaches me. She takes my locks in her hands and moves it out the way. If you know anything about Black women, you don't touch our hair. I'm about to be real in the room, right? You don't touch our hair. You don't go to anybody and touch their hair. You don't do that. It's a violation anyway. You certainly don't touch our hair. And if it's locks, you definitely don't touch it unless you ask permission, which you're not going to get. Anyway, she says she wants to see my name band. So she says to me, where am I from? Now, because we're there for the 16 days of activism, I'm the CEO of Sistah Space, I said, I'm from Sistah Space. And then it went on from there. I'm not going to go into details yet. 29th of October, we've got something called Unfiltered. And I'm going to talk the thing. 29th of October. If you want to see or find it, go on to our IG, Sistah Space, I don't know, whatever. But the point is, I went home. Now, I'm old school. When I was at school, there was no such thing as internet. So I think I'm putting out something that nobody on Twitter don't pay me no mind. So when I put this smart thing on Twitter, within an hour, my phone's going off. I'm on my way out of London. My phone's going off. 2 twos. There's reporters. everywhere. Yes? And from that moment on, my life changed. It has still changed. All right. So I speak in this room. I remember I'm told I've got 1 minute. I think we're here for an hour, so I know we've got more time than a minute. But anyway, yeah. It's okay. I'm only joking. The thing is, yes, if we think that slavery or that kind of mentality has stopped, let me tell you something. It's alive and well and here.
Should I speak or are we waiting for another panelist? Right. No worries, no worries. Right, so at Sister Space, we deal with mainly the intersectionality of race, racism, and gender-based violence. And I think what's interesting when we look at it through the lens of reparations and we focus on gender needs is more what we kind of discover within our role. When we look at the race element, of course, we as Black people know what happens to us as a race. We know the things that we face together as a people, and we know the intricacies of the things that we face in terms of gender. So though we may have similarities, the Black man's struggle and the Black woman's struggle have a lot of differences. And I think it's really interesting because the Black woman kind of falls into this area that's not really talked about. We have feminism, which we all know doesn't really work a lot of the time for Black women. A lot of the time it's based on a white perspective. And then we have race, which oftentimes at the forefront of that is the Black man. So we ask ourselves, where does the Black woman fall and what are her requirements, whether it's in a domestic abuse setting or whether it's outside of that. Now, obviously at Sister Space, we specialize within gender-based violence. So we look at the intricacies of domestic abuse from the lens of race. That means when we have a Black service user, is she able to report to a police system because it's racist? Is she able to access equal care from her GP, from her midwife, all of these things? But then even without domestic abuse, a lot of these questions still stand. We have situations where Black women are hesitant to get pregnant or scared of a system, rightfully so, because of things that only affect them. When we talk about women or Black women being 4 times more likely to die in childbirth, that's nothing to do with biology. That doesn't affect men. Well, obviously it doesn't affect men, but not directly. And that doesn't affect white women. So these are some examples of issues that directly affect Black women that are not discussed and not acknowledged. So when we look at reparations and we look at things from the lens of gender, these are things that have to be considered. What are things that affect Black women at present that aren't being acknowledged, that they deal with on a day-to-day, that they're going to be expected to continue to deal with as they go forward? So I'll leave it there and I'll pick it up afterwards. Yeah. Okay, I have more time. Yeah, so essentially that's where my premise is coming from. I think a lot of the aspects of feminism are relevant to women as a whole, but they're based on a system that is inherently white. And so when we look at, for example, job roles and the not enough women in the workplace or pay gap, we're actually fighting for a system that doesn't even have Black men to start with. So our problem isn't necessarily that as Black women, we're not being paid equal to Black men. It's that as Black people, we've not even got a room, a seat at the table, a job in the industry. So there's a lot of complexities and there's a lot of intersectionality we need to look at. It doesn't mean that we are looking at our brothers as the opposition or enemies or anything of the such. It just means there needs to be a time and space that we can consider the Black woman's journey and the Black woman's needs in her own space. So what that capacity looks like alongside the Black man.
I want to add to that by saying this. We as a charity that supports African heritage women need to make clear this. Supporting Black women doesn't mean we are against Black men. Let me say that again. Supporting Black women does not mean we are against Black men. We can see very clearly the struggle that Black men face on a daily basis. We are against perpetrators. They're not the same thing. All right. So the UK or the way that the system here works is, you know, it's women and, you know, we can't have anything to do with men and all this kind of thing. It's our children, it's our Black boys also affected. So we need to keep the family in mind, right? So you're not going to separate us. We've already got problems within. So Sister Space kind of works differently. We support Black women first and foremost, but that is not at the expense of Black men. Is that clear? Does that make sense to you? It's very important. All right. Having said all that, and you guys need to stop me when it's ready, please, I beg, because when I'm ready, yeah. Having said all of that, some of the trauma that we face as Black people is one thing. Black men face, as you said, a particular type of trauma. The women experience that and more. Unfortunately, and I'm going to give a trigger warning here, right? The women that come to us are either at medium or high risk, or we're supporting the children of women who have passed through domestic abuse. It is rife. It is a conversation that we must have. It is urgent.
Thank you both for your contribution. Yeah. I will open the floor while we are while we are waiting whether we have someone from outside. I will open the floor. Yeah, question. Yeah, if you have questions, Tanita.
Greetings, everyone. Can everyone hear me if I talk this way? I think there's several things. I think it's actually a really big conversation. Like what you found from the groups talking about how we're having these gender discussions on what is gendered rights reparations, like what does that really look like, what does that mean? I think there's a lot of things in that, and like you guys have said, it touched on the issues that we face within our own community around domestic abuse and violence, gender-based violence. And I think one of the things I really want to stress, it's kind of a comment to followed by us. One of the things I want to stress is that we cannot have, I think the thing is, we're in a state of serious disrepair as a community. And we see that in the gender-based violence that happens to women. And we see that in the way that a lot of our women are co-opted into this imperialist system that we live in right now, this system of British. So a lot of our aspirations for our young girls is just being the first Black something. And it's like, we can't just continue to decorate this system that lives on genocide and genocide of our peoples, of the genocide of the Herero, of the genocide of all of our peoples, right? So
Is everyone okay? Are you hearing? Okay.
So there's something about recognizing that disrepair and recognizing that the solutions can't be to emulate the oppressor. And in recognizing that disrepair is that we can't even prevent suffering within our own communities because we don't have ownership or control over our own communities. Yeah. We don't have any self-determination. As a people, we're not in control of our own destinies, we're not in control of our social, our cultural ways of being, because and that should be one of the first things, that restoration of our self-determination is a big part of what that reparations looks like. So when we think about the conversation of how do we improve the position of African women in the diaspora and in the continent, it is about how do we deal with that question of having African, having our own communities that are governed by our own communities and by our own community interests. And I think also that how are we supporting young women to be leaders in this movement? I think it's a question I have. And I think I'd also like to know what are kind of the specific harms that were done to women, specifically kind of from the Herero genocide, and what has been the work of women to repair those harms, and what can we learn from that kind of reparations struggle?
Thank you. Thank you, Tanita. Any more question? Oh, yeah. Okay. You want to first answer?
Yeah, I think it's quite a long question.
Okay.
I'll start with part of it, just in terms of being quite fragmented as a group and having our own intricate issues within our society. I definitely think it's an issue that needs to be addressed. I think it's an issue that needs to be addressed kind of in-house, in a safe space for us, by us. And I think the first step is creating safe spaces that are safe to actually exist in, where we can have these conversations without judgment, without fear of repercussion. And I think it's important that when we talk about supporting each other, rooms like this should be filled with men also. you don't have to be a woman to support women. I think it should be a situation where we understand that everybody in society has a role to fulfill and giving them that space to do so. So I completely agree with what you're saying in the sense that we have a lot of work to do in-house first. And I think it starts with supporting one another and also funding those safe spaces and creating those safe spaces.
Listen, it starts with self. First of all, it starts with self. Yes, because if you already realize something's wrong, something's not right, it has started with self. So you don't like the situation as you see it, you know changes need to be made. You have to look within, find the strength and find direction and join, as we have today, with others to say no more, we're moving forward.
Okay. I'm not supposed to, I'm actually supposed to convene the panel, but a question which was raised by Tanita, it's a very important question. What happened to those that went through all these atrocities, the harm that was done? Like to my people, we were raped. The dress that I'm wearing it because we took it, because we have to cover our body for the evil eye of the Germans that were raping our women, children, any female. How or what did we do to heal ourselves? We haven't found time because we are still fighting for the injustice that was done by those who oppress us, now that are still happening through our own governments. I'm saying this because of the fake governments that we are having, the fake independence that we are having. Are we really independent? No. Because part of what we have lost is land. Do we have the land? Still, the land are in the hands of those who took it away from us. And it's over 117 years back, but still, my people are living in diaspora. I will leave it there. Any question? I will give the floor to you. Thank you.
That's fine. No worries. It was, yeah. Hi. My question is in link to the question that Tanita had asked, in terms of like this question of how we're able to return to an African understanding of women and womanhood in the descriptions you given, and able to empower our women and our girls, like we've been speaking about, as part of the repatriation process as well, because I understand what you're saying about the self and how the self is how we like have to start that growth. But when the education or the miseducation that we've gone through has in ways corrupted and disrupted our understanding of the self, how are we able to then educate our children, our aunties, everyone in our family, our women, to be able to have that understanding of women and African women as part of the reparations process?
From what I understand of the question is essentially, how do we work on starting from self as even an initial point? I think there's so many different ways you can approach this. Once you recognize that there's an issue, once you understand that there is something that needs to be done, not all of us have the privilege of having positive role models or somebody who's able to kind of help us with that journey. But I think the start the work starting with self is really important, because even just understanding your history, reading up on where you come from, there's actually a lot of resources out there. They're not publicly always kind of screamed about, but they are there. If you have the privilege to go back home, I always tell people it's very quick. We're often excited to go to where's trending on Instagram, what's happening in Europe. Oftentimes when you go back home, the information and the history is right there in front of you. You don't always have to go back home to find it. There are people in your community that are here talking about it, whether it's events like this, whether it's write-ups and academics that people are doing online, or whether it's social media, wherever you're finding it. But starting with stuff, there are literature, there's books on it. I think it's easier than we think as a demographic. Maybe not automatically, it's not in front of us, but nothing worth having comes easy.
I'm sorry that I have to cut you short because we are running out of time and we have someone online. Can we? Okay.
The need for internationalist approach to reparations stems from the shared improvement history and traditional wisdom of Asia, Africa, Americas, and China. Protection of Mother Earth has been central in our everyday lives. Our practices and customs are reflective of the greenery and natural sources around us. The eastern region of India, where I come from, the people of Sundarbans worship the Lord of Bengal type. The Adivasis of Nandi worship the hills, which are considered to be the abode of the near past. The farmers of South Asia worship the grain, the harvest of their land. As somebody who has spent most of the life in India, where we have worshipped trees and greenery, I feel the pain of Palestinians losing their olive trees. I would have felt the same if it was a mango tree from my home. A foundation approach to reparations draws largely the traditional wisdom of Asia. Women of Asia have largely contributed in passing on this wisdom from one generation to the other. It is the women of Asia who has transformed knowledge into cultural practices of the region. Women have been pioneers in carrying the knowledge of medicine, dance, and Ayurveda through their culinary expertise, which in turn has become customs and traditions. Luipert, considered to be a community booster, is one of such examples of Asian cultural practices, which now has become a global trend and is seen on menu in almost all leading coffee shops in Britain. Potatoes, one of the main ingredients for many Asian cuisines, has traveled from Afrikan to Asia. Food has compelled us to embrace our intercontinental wisdom and knowledge. Ironically, when there was greater mobility within the borders of Asia and Africa, just like there is greater mobility within the political borders in Europe, we in the erstwhile colonies are still fighting for the colonial drawn borders within our homes, our courtyards, our gardens, between our brothers and sisters in what we call today as India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. These infidels have now cost us economically, politically, socially, psychologically, also environmentally. At a time where one didn't need a passport to travel to Asia and Africa has witnessed a huge volume of trade through sea routes. The civic community, that is a community of Asian Africans living in various parts of Asia, are a result of such migration in the continents. As people migrate, so does their culture and their traditional knowledge, which in turn enriches our collective wisdom of our mother earth. In 2023, where the world is grappling with climate crisis, food crisis, and migration, among many other crises, international reparations is the need of the hour for our
the sake, for the sake of Mother Earth, for the sake of the survival of ourselves and our children.
That is Dr. Sumana Nandi from India. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah, you can go through the question. Yeah, you can.
I've been hearing this term rematriation, and I don't think I exactly know what that means. And I'd really like a definition of rematriation, if anybody knows what that is.
Can I go through this?
Exactly.
So rematriation is about restoring the cultural, spiritual, material belonging to Mother Earth, to Mother Africa on Mother Earth, so to the mother continent. So when we talk about repatriation, it's more about the physical going back or return to the motherland. When we talk about rematriation, it's about how we're making sure that we actually belong and understand what it means to be part of Mother Africa. So that's essentially what rematriation is about, and it's a process and a journey for us all to kind of go on, because we've all gone through various different levels of colonization, which means even if we just turn up, right, and go back, it doesn't mean that we have rematriated necessarily, for example.
Yes, hello. My question is, so you're talking a lot about individual women and their suffering, and, you know, certainly in your organization actually offering services and so on. But I'm interested too in, you know, whether there are particular things that you think that women offer coming together as a group, you know, that have a particular focus. You know, you would say, okay, this is what we're going to do as women. We're not going to do it in, you know, across everybody. You know, and like also you were talking about needing to pay attention to the men in the society, or raising young boys so they don't become abusers or something like that. But it's still actually sort of using yourself in a particular sort of social way.
Okay, I need to clarify that. All right. This has nothing to do with nurturing young Black men so they don't become abusers. This is about nurturing Black men and Black boys because that is what we do. And they're our family. So it's nothing to do. So I need you to be clear about that. All right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, I have to cut on this because we have other panels that need to come up, please. And I will give you the chance before we go out here. Thank you.
I think if you would answer that bit, you've got enough time, you can answer that, and then I can say it.
Okay.
You've got 5 minutes, the videos and the 5 minutes.
So if I understand the question, you're talking about women coming together, right? Which is a powerful thing. Unfortunately, that doesn't work for Black women. We find that when we are in wider groups, the needs of the white women are always met before the Black women. And that is unfortunate, why we've had to find our own space, because what's done out there doesn't reflect us, doesn't hear us, doesn't understand us. We're in a system that's institutionally racist. So I'll give you examples very quickly. When you hear about certain deaths or certain people going missing, if they're white, they'll be all over the media. If they're Black, nothing. So unless and until we are treated equally, we will always need a space for Black women, and sister space will always be that space.
Have a question?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name's Jo Cargill, and I will admit I love to talk, so I'm going to try my best to keep it as short as possible. I'm very aware of Sistah space, and that's because I'm a mature lady and I've been around for a long while. I'm a practicing lawyer and I run a small law firm in the City of London, and I try to reasonably price myself and not use the proper prices for me, so as to live and breathe practically everything that you're saying in this room. I suppose that my business technically is open to everybody, but I see a lot of Black women every day on not necessarily the best side of the law and not necessarily the best treatments. So I've seen, I'm just going to give a few examples, not many. The case that probably brings me to tears is the woman who went to jail for a crime she definitely didn't commit. And I decided that, right, we were going to fight it. And I had, because I was going against lawyers in the city and chambers in the city, it was closed shop because I was going against white lawyers. So I went to somewhere in Birmingham. We got the advice we need, you've got a case, etc., etc. And do you know that that man went on holiday 5 days before we're supposed to lodge that woman's case, and it has a limitation period. As a Black woman. Do you know, I reminded myself I was one of the top law students in my year, and that I remember how to draft, and I drafted that woman's claim, and I lodged that woman's claim on time. And then I went back to that chambers, and I said, I don't want to use this guy for the damages. And he said, you've got to use him, Joanne. Went back to him. Do you know that man said, Joanne, I'm happy to put my name on your draft claim because I can't believe how good it is, you know? At the end of the day, in that particular case, the client fell too ill. It burns me. She went to jail for a crime she definitely did not commit, and we couldn't fight it. I do not care about the system. My job is to get the justice for people that they deserve. Equal pay, racial pay gap. Do you think that some of us lawyers here don't fight for it? Let me tell you, we've been fighting for it before they even label it. There are people out there that would have got what they deserve without going to court because of me. I'm just a small law firm, and there are other women out there for me, but I eat and breathe what you say every day. And it burns me how Black women are second-class citizens in this country in 2023, and it's just not right.
I'm just gonna quickly acknowledge the sister while I decide what's happening. Thank you for sharing that. And I think what it resonates with me most is, I'm just gonna sum up because I'm not sure what's happening here. But I understand. But I would just like to say, in terms of where we are and what's taking place, the importance of standing strong as Black women and making sure that our voice is heard. I think when we look at reparations and we look at these kind of discussions, oftentimes Black women are spoken for. We have a clear example with the sister with the law firm in which she was very much adequate and capable of doing the work that she does. And in a lot of situations, we have to be co-signed by a white person, co-signed by a male, co-signed by an other. Even in spaces like this, we often have a lot of the notable speakers speaking on our behalf. So the thing that I'm stressing here is, when we look at Black women and what's to happen to us and what's to happen for us, to make sure that it's being decided by us, spoken about by us, and decided by us. So I think it's important to keep us at the forefront of the conversation. And I know with that, we have another question.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Sister Just Sunway from Galaxy Radio, also from Shine Your Light, Reach Your Potential, Training Action. Thank you for your inspiring work. Yes, I know your story. Trust me, sisters, we were voting and stressing and supporting your cause. I think my sister in here asked an interesting question. I think in some respects, it's kind of been alluded to. And when we think about the reparation narrative and the struggle within our own unit within our own family as sisters, as women, women. How do we ensure that our energy, our contribution is recognized and valued in the struggle? I know we've got certain sisters like Esther amongst others, but they will also tell you privately there's a struggle within with regards to the woman's voice and being heard. What can we do as we move closer to forming those narratives around compensation, reparation? How do we ensure that the healing bit that we do, the invisible bit that we do at home, the picking up the traumas that we do at home, the sucking that up that causes cancer of the uterus? So many of us have got fibroids or had fibroids, suffering with all forms of cancer and dis-ease of the body, because where does all that trauma go? We suck it up, don't we? And then you hear a poem about the death of the strong Black woman. And in all of this narrative, there needs to be a space, because I heard it talked about downstairs. How do we protect our mental, spiritual, and physical well-being in this? Because we as sisters continue to feel the butt of the tension and the anger that our brothers, rightly or wrongly, may hold as a result of their oppression, but there's still something in there, because we galvanize the family, don't we? Whether we like it or not. We could be good mothers, bad mothers. It's up to our children to determine what that is. I'm sure my son would say certain things, but ultimately he will say, my mum's a loving woman and she makes the house a home. So how do we create a space where we can do what we are called to do, and pass that skill on as you've done to your daughter?
So what I'll do is I will just post that online later on. All right, so we'll use that last 5 minutes just to kind of, if that's all right. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. I just want to do something.
I want to thank you, because you're feeding us all in the room, yeah? And you also have to be careful of who's in the room, yeah? I'm not directing that at anybody, but you have to be careful of who's in the room, who enters your head, who enters your mind, right? Who questions you, who thinks they have the right to question you. I do what I do, right? On this earth, I have seen, my parents came over here early, and I've seen what's happened to them. I've seen how they've had to bow when white women are telling their children, mind when you cross the road, look left and right. Mine were telling me, look, don't upset the white people. Not in so many words, but those are the kind of traumas we were coming from. Always having to be quiet and mind and whatever. I don't mind anymore. My talk up the thing, yeah? And anyone who doesn't want to hear my voice has the choice to leave. So how do we do this? We look after each other. Can I share this news, but not all of it? I can't say too much, but I thought, how do we protect ourselves? How do we protect our mind? How do we do this? We need our own refuge and on respite, yeah? It's taken me 6 years to share with you today that we're a minute away. We are going to have the first ever refuge for Black women. First ever done, paid for, owned. Good.
20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I was
Can we stop the debate? Can we stop the debate? Can we stop the debate so that she can?
No, can I just quickly share? Right, 30 years ago, when I was at university, I was doing an assignment on domestic violence and Black women. Out of this whole university, do you know there was one book on domestic violence and Black women in the short-term library? I could only take it out for 3 days. One book 30 years ago. And this is something as a result of chattel enslavement, as a result of those traumas that have permeated through the generation and still operating One book.
Yeah.
I just.
No, I'm
to
blessed.
let you know how important
Yeah.
the work that you are doing is in giving us our sisters
Yeah.
and our brothers a voice to articulate what's happening.
We're trying, Mrs. Yeah. Yeah. We can talk, yeah. I'm gonna share with you. Let me tell you, you just blessed the space for me, yeah. And I give thanks. I'm actually doing a PhD. I've just had to buy 400 books, buy them, because I can't walk anywhere anymore. I can't, right? My face is instantly recognized and not everybody likes me. That's my life right now. So rather than go to the library, I have bought 400 books. But you know what? Nothing now gonna stop me. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd just like to kind of address the first part of that question, and my response will be, throughout history, there's been powerful Black women. There's been, whether it's Harriet Tubman, whether it's Angela Davis, whether it's Esther, whoever's in the room, powerful Black women won't stop. It's something that has existed and will continue to exist. And I think when you talk about the pressures that we face, my first response will be safe spaces. When we talk about our space, because it's the only option that we have to talk about, we are not based on a Western framework. We become whatever we need as a community. So I would encourage you to start your own spaces, be your own spaces. You don't need, funding is great, but it starts from somewhere. So when you talk about where do we start with self, look at your neighbor, come join us at the Sister Space, go online and send us a message. Literally, when we create our own, it's down to us how we navigate the system, how we navigate the space. So yes, we deal with domestic abuse, but in that moment, if you come through the Sister Space doors and you need to vent to someone, you're going to be able to vent to someone. We're there first and foremost for Black women and then survivors.
Greetings to everyone in this room. I just want to commend you all for the work that you are doing, particularly the youngest one for the work that she's been doing over Carnival and the preservation of our ancestry, my grandparents, for instance, Carnival outfits and things like that. Just wanted to say that was very inspiring for me. I wanted to pay homage to the work that you're doing through 4 women who this month, as you know, we're saluting our sisters, and I definitely salute all of you on the panel. Claudia Jones, Uma Marson, trying to say these names right, Salanda Robson, and also Amy Ashwood Garvey. And when I've researched the work that each of these 4 women have done, and the trauma that they've gone through, and the fact that they actually had their own careers and ambitions, but stopped it just to advance the work that we're doing, I want to commend each of you, because I know that you're setting a new legacy, which is actually to pursue your careers, your academic vices, alongside trying to ensure that you support the community. One of the things that I heard was about archives. And I want to say, I'm also in the process of doing my PhD on the ongoing legacy of African chattel slavery, and the fact that it's very difficult for Black people to get archives. So I wanted to ask if Sister Space and anyone who could support Sister Space to create a library so that Black researchers like myself and others that are coming behind can access documents. So if anyone can do that for Sister Space, I would really commend that you can support them with donating any material that you can so that we can access archives and books. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. We were given up to 5:10. It's already 5:15. So thank you, everyone.